Hey everybody, we're gonna talk today about how the trans cult is a fucking cult for the 900 millionth time. I don't know how many times I have to say this until the day I die, but hopefully the trans cult will be no more by that point. So, an easy way to identify something that's a cult is by the BITE model. Someone came up with the BITE model. I don't know who it was. I'm pretty sure it was a guy, but BITE is an acronym for Behavior, Information, Thinking, and Emotions. BITE. Okay? So the trans cult controls all four of those things. And what I will give them credit for is I don't even think they were intending to become a cult. I don't think that, and they also don't have like one specific leader like many cults do, but they were able to successfully completely infiltrate mainstream society, just about. And now there's a cult among us. I, unsurprisingly, have gotten into it with a fair amount of trans cult members online, and I just wanted to kind of go over some screenshots with y'all and explain how their own comments very clearly overtly display the fact that they're in a cult. Okay. So here's something that has been an issue with trans trenders and their allies, the trans cult, since it really gained popularity. And that's that if you say something to them, so the only thing that is okay for them to just identify as, and then they are immediately that thing, is their hashtag gender or sex. They're generally pretty unclear on the definitions of both of those words, but they also completely do not understand that gender is fully a religious belief. And there's absolutely nothing they can say to refute that, right? But what I was going to say was when you say something that is very obviously not true, like, can I identify as this, or can I identify as not my race, or can you identify as a dog? Their immediate response is always, that's not the same thing. That's different. How is it different? How is it not as ridiculous to say, well, I identify as a dog, therefore I'm a dog, than it is to say that you're not your natural sex? Those things are equally ridiculous and also objectively not true, also observably not true, but one to them is okay and the other one is not. It's okay to say your gender. It's okay to have a gender, but it's not okay and not at all the same thing to deny your hair color, deny your height, deny your race, deny your ethnicity. But it's okay to deny your gender. So they're just all so incredibly stupid, and they have all these prayers and mantras they like to say to themselves, that are ascribed to them by their cult, and they don't realize it. They just think that the cult word is law, right? Here's an example. Well, my hair identifies as pink. It's about actions, you dumb bitch. A trans man will do things like a man might do. A trans woman might do things like a woman might do. Because trans men are men and trans women are women. Yeah, again, not fucking true. Say that as many times as you like, but it's not fucking true. I can scream and shout from every single rooftop that I'm a performer in Cirque du Soleil, but I am in fact not. And if you go to every single Cirque du Soleil show, you're not going to see me performing in the circus because I'm not a circus performer. Maybe you'll see me in the audience, but no matter what I say, I'm not a circus performer. Just like no matter what they say, they're not their imaginary genders. moving on. Sorry, these are kind of out of order, but that doesn't really matter. So I gave this absolute fucking moron this example, okay? I can send you the link. I'll put the link to this under the video. I'm not even going to talk about these because they're so disturbing, and a lot of these are incredibly disturbing. This was, I think, more than 5 pages long, but I just searched instances in which trenders physically, sexually assaulted women, and all of these examples came up. Okay? I'll just read this one. VA judge finds transgender teen guilty of sexual assault in Loudoun County High School girls' bathroom case. Oklahoma transgender student charged with assaulting female high school classmates in bathroom. Transgender woman convicted of sexually assaulting a child in a bathroom, etc. Okay? If that happens one time, it's too many. And clearly here we have multiple examples of it. So it clearly happens on a regular basis and or frequently. Right? This should be alarming to anyone. This should be a problem to anyone. Like I said a second ago, one time is too many. But we have multiple examples of this, unfortunately, and people who advocate for transgenderism advocate for this behavior, or maybe enable this behavior. And that is a problem, and that should be a problem to any sane person. I gave her this example. Sorry, I didn't even give you the context. This non-binary woman started DMing me on Instagram, and she thought she had some kind of argument against me when in fact she didn't. And I was like, this is a problem. I was like, I showed her this. I was like, how is this not a problem? And I said that was a tranny. I was like, wait, hold on, sorry. I again, like I did these out of orders. I said, I think there's something wrong with you. And so I showed her that. That was an example of a ton of trans women being in women's bathrooms, assaulting women and girls. And she was like, well, why can't you just be against rape? Yeah, that happens sometimes. People rape. Like, they just immediately disregard the fact that they're trenders. They immediately say, well, there's bad people in every group of people. Obviously, you dumb bitch. But this is clearly a pattern. I'll remind you that Ed Gein liked to dress up like a woman. There's a recent case, unfortunately, of a man murdering his child, okay, who was, I think, 11 to 12. He murdered his own son because his son found pictures of his father on his laptop of his father dressing up like a woman. Unfortunately, they haven't found the body of this poor boy, but, like, again, this is a fucking pattern. It has been a documented fact that serial killers, a lot of the time, are autogynephiles, which is a man who is sexually aroused by dressing, quote-unquote, like a woman, right? So I went ahead and called them trannies because she was like, well, if you're afraid of a rapist, then why are you sharing a house with your husband? And I said, I think there's something wrong with you if you're comparing me sharing a home with my husband to trannies raping women in bathrooms. And she said, oh, slur, this is how mentally twisted these people are. I will show them documented cases of transgender men, of trans women sexually assaulting women in bathrooms. I'll call them trannies. Instead of her saying, wow, that's really bad, this is a problem, she'll say, you said the word trannies. This is another example of the behavior, information, thinking, emotions, that transgenderism causes people to feel, causes people to behave. Sorry, I said I switched to emotions because, well, that's another one. That's another example. So not only does this show the fact that their behavior is modified. It also shows the fact that their emotions are modified. Instead of being appalled and disgusted that men dressed up as women are raping women in bathrooms, they say, you said the word tranny, which is also a behavior, which is deflecting the more serious issue at hand of men raping women, men dressed as women raping women. Okay? So she just downplays that. She downplayed that whole, I don't even think she looked at it, but it doesn't matter because you don't have to look at it. Because if I give you a list of this happening, that's a list of it happening. You don't even have to read the list. She could easily have checked these sources because you can fact check every single one and they all in fact did happen. So instead of being upset about that, she's upset about the fact that I called them trannies. What an idiot. This woman was claiming to be non-binary, and I was like, you need to stop. I was like, stop being non-binary. That's so fucking stupid. You're a woman forever. And she kept just being like, no, I'm not a woman. I'm not a woman. Here's another thing that they do, is that they think if they... It's kind of like Beetlejuice, even. You know, if you say in the movie, if you say the word Beetlejuice 3 times, he shows up. Or like Candyman. If you say Candyman, I don't know, was it 5 times in the mirror, he shows up. They think if you say, I'm not a woman, I'm not a woman, I'm non-binary, I'm non-binary, enough times, that'll make it true. I can't get over how stupid that is. I can't get over how religious that is. Not even religious, not even the most fanatical religious people are that stupid. But the trans cult is. Anyway, yeah, this girl was really offended by me calling her a woman. And she was like, she said, I don't want to be a woman, but I respect them and support their actions and rights. No, the fuck you don't. If you're self-erasing yourself by being called non-binary and you're in fact a woman. No, the fuck you don't if you're refusing to be called a woman. So how can you respect women but refuse to be called one when you are one? That makes no sense. Again, let's just read this first thing up here. A trans man will do things like a man might do. A trans woman might do things like a woman might do. That's sexist. That is sexist. Period. The end. Okay? That is 100 fucking percent sexist. And wrong, quite frankly. I mean, took me a long time because I was in denial of this fact, but the fact of the matter is that women are more likely to have certain characteristics and behaviors, and men are more likely to have certain characteristics and behaviors. Yes, there are exceptions, obviously, but the fact of the matter is it's true. Women do tend to be more compassionate and caring than men. Obviously, that's not all the time, and I'm not saying that men are incapable of being those things, but that's why we have more women that are vegetarian. Because vegetarianism banks on that fact. They say, well, if you're caring, if you really care about animals, you'll not eat them. So women are like, oh my God, okay, I won't. I was telling this girl that, all I searched was correlation between autism and gender, and this showed up immediately, right? Because the trans cult does actually prey upon people who might be autistic or not, not neurotypical. Again, the reason that that is that autistic people love rules. They love routines. They love having guidelines for everything. And there are some loose guidelines, right, of how men and women behave in our society. Yes, women do tend to have long hair. Yes, women do tend to wear dresses. Yes, men do tend to be taller and physically stronger than women. Those are just some basic things that are true. right? Obviously, but it's not a fact, because you could go out and find a man right now who has longer hair than me. You could go out and find a man right now who's physically weaker than me. A grown man. It's possible, right? But autistic folks love these rules so much. And that's why they latch onto these things, and that's why they say stupid shit like this. I don't know if this woman is autistic or not, but she was, and they have very rigid thinking, right? A trans man will do things like a man might do. A trans woman might do things like a woman might do. That's just so stupid. What are things like a man might do? What are things like a woman might do? Because trans men are men and trans women are women. Right? Because cats are cats and dogs are dogs and mattresses are mattresses and water bottles are water bottles. That's redundant and stupid as fuck. Why would you say that? I guess they say that because it brings comfort to them and it reinforces their belief that you can change your gender. That as long as you claim trans, you'll be that thing. Real dumb. I didn't say that it could all be trans women. Here, this is, okay. I'm literally not denying that sometimes people assault others, but you're the one saying that it could be all trans women. I did not say that. I didn't say that only trans women assault women. That's not true. But I gave her a list of instances where it happened. I gave her a list of extreme examples. And those are the only ones that were public. There were tons more. There are tons more that we don't even know about. That list should be alarming to anyone who can read. But she obviously, she was like, well, why don't you just focus on anti-rape? Men rape, women rape. Yeah, men actually tend to rape more. I'm not saying women don't rape, because they do. They can. But if you get all the numbers, even if we could magically whip up the numbers of the ones that are unreported, we would likely find that men, we would find that men rape more than women do. Why not just focus on anti-rape? Well, dumbass, you can't just focus on that. If you were to focus on that, then you would say, hey, men do tend to rape more because they are aggressive, because they tend to be more physically aggressive than women. It's a fact. I don't know why these people can't, their cult prohibits them from acknowledging basic facts that everyone knows. Everyone knows that men tend to be more physically aggressive than women. Everyone knows. Well, you know what? It's not even that men tend to be more physically aggressive than women. Men do overpower women for the most part. Men are more physically strong than women for the most part. Okay? That's just a fact. But they like to deny facts. It's really not that deep who's doing it. Yes, it is, you dipshit. All of the people, actually in that list I sent her, I think there were actually some trans men, some women committing sexual assaults too. I'll leave the link below. But she said, it's really not that deep who's doing it. Yes, the fuck it is. Yes, it is. It is that deep. You need to look into the facts of what has happened. But they don't do that because their cult prohibits them from doing so. Their cult prohibits them from not just obtaining that information, it does prohibit them from obtaining that information, but it inhibits them from processing that information. Obviously, she can't even process that information. because she's in a cult. Pathetic. Okay. This woman was a LARPer. Honestly, I made a funny comment on this completely unrelated video. It was a totally unrelated video. I just made a funny comment, and it was very clearly a joke, but someone else commented and was like, "Ooh, you're dumb, you're a dumb bitch," like not understanding that I was making a joke. And it turned into this whole fucking thing, which, like, don't fuck with me. Don't fuck with me if you can't stand your ground and have an actual argument. But anyway, I'll just read this. Okay. I thought y'all could always tell. You're so embarrassing, LMFAO. Yes, I am transgender, but I also am aware that I have XX chromosomes. Well, probably I've never gotten tested. You don't need to get tested for that, dipshit. Sorry, this is a completely different woman. The gal whose screenshots I was just showing you, that was a different person who was on this dog pile, okay? It was all a dog pile. We were all participating in the dog pile, but it's funny when there's one voice of reason, me in this specific scenario, and other people, the other people in the dog pile are like, "You're a dumb turf bitch." But anyway, no one needs to get tested for being female. Chances are, like, if you have a chromosomal disorder, you're going to know. You will more than fucking likely know that. I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but there is a chromosomal difference where males, okay, can have an extra X chromosome. They have XY. XY makes male, right? They have XY, but they have an extra X chromosome, but they are in fact male. They do look a little bit physically different, but I don't think that you would ever look at a man with this problem and be like, "Oh, there's something physically wrong with," like, they look I mean, I haven't seen all of them, obviously, but yeah, they look normal. Hold on, I'm going to look it up because it's going to bother me. So, it's called Klinefelter syndrome. That's what I thought. I just didn't want to say it. It's possible for men to have a Y chromosome. Or sorry, an additional X chromosome. But they're still men. And, okay, anyway, I'm going to finish reading this comment. "And am biologically female. However, I don't think that the body I was born with should dictate how I choose to live and be referred to as." So she doesn't want to be called a woman because she's too chicken shit to be called a woman. "Sex is binary, not bimodal, and even someone who has female reproductive organs, genitals, can be a biological male as long as they have a Y chromosome." What? Even someone who has female reproductive organs can be a biological male as long as they have a Y chromosome? The fuck? Who has female reproductive organs and a Y chromosome? I don't think that's a thing. The men I just mentioned to you with Klinefelter syndrome, they have male genitals. They have dicks, okay? So another thing, another word salad that they made up that they think is true because they say it enough times. "As long as they have a Y chromosome. So in my opinion, there's little need to categorize sex and gender at all." They love to disregard this. They love to just shut down these arguments, right? There's little need for it. Okay, that's not true. You literally need different medical care. You guys, you need different medical care based on your weight. Okay? They need to know you can't just give a doctor symptoms. You can't just be like, "Oh, this person is experiencing this and this. What should we do?" And then you're like, the doctor's going to say, "Well, is it a man? Is it a woman? Like, were they in an accident? Are they just they need more information than that." You can't just go off of vague shit and call it good. Anyway, okay. There's little need to categorize sex and gender at all. Well, gender is completely made up and sex is actual fact, so there's that. You just made the assumption that I'm in denial about my body and hate myself and ran with it. Yeah, you do. Transgenders hate themselves, full stop. Why would you want to change yourself even if you don't have any physical modification? Why are you pretending to be something that you are not if you don't hate yourself? I don't even plan on getting bottom surgery. I'm fine with having a pussy. It's like someone whose name is Jonathan but prefers to go by John. No, the fuck it isn't, you dumb bitch. It is nothing like that. It couldn't be like that if it tried. This is why we have all those rapists raping women in bathrooms. This is why we now have people that were sterilized as children. This is why we have ongoing sexism. Because like I just showed you, it's overt, proud, open sexism to be pro-trans. Period. It is anti-gay. It is anti-science. It is anti-reality. These people are living in a fucking fantasy world. And they're expecting everyone else to just join in with them. Because that's what they want. Insert thumb in mouth. Bing, bing, bing. It's really not rocket science. I honestly feel bad for you. Like, they love to pin it on me. Like I'm the problem for saying you need to stop going by they and woman up. I'm the problem for denying to go along with people's imaginary perceptions of themselves when it's something as simple as what sex you are. Oh yeah, I'm the problem there. Duh. Okay. You're so funny and you don't even know it. You're genuinely so cute. I just want to give you a little pat on your weird shaped head. Okay, I don't have any direct examples of this, but hold on. Well, this is a direct example of it. The trans cult can't insult people. They're really bad at it. I'm really good at it, in case you guys haven't noticed. But they love to just immediately revert to sexism. They love to immediately say, well, you're an ugly turf. Cool. I'm happy you think that. You're entitled to that opinion. Not everyone's going to find me attractive. But that doesn't refute any of my points. She's here being like, you're just so cute. You're so cute and angry. You're so adorable. Which is sexist. That's sexism. It is sexism when people say, well, oh, look how cute those women are. They're angry. Okay, here's one of my favorites. You know we have records of trans people existing since the Stone Age, right? No, the fuck we don't. I have never heard of that. Have you ever taken a college level, 101 anthropology class? Because that's not true. Why the fuck would cave people have transgenderism? That is dumb as fuck. They love to just act like these lies that they've made up, like transgender people have been around forever, are true. And they love to just parade them like they're the truth and they've always been the truth and everyone knows they're the truth. All their trans friends and friends know that they're the truth and it's always been that way. Lies. That is complete and total lies. That's just, I guess they like to tell themselves that because that makes them feel more secure about their position. That makes them think that being trans is good because it's something that's always been around. Just like tools. Human beings have always used tools. It's stupid. And it's not true. Okay. I guess that's also very self-aggrandizing. Like they really think that they're special because they have this belief. It's not a fact. It's a belief that trans people have always been around. They've always existed. Therefore, they're special. No. Trans and non-binary people have existed in every culture around the world, from pre-colonial Philippines, India, and various indigenous tribes throughout the U.S., even among white Americans. That's not true. None of that is true. That is 100% false. And trenders love to be like, well, what about two-spirit people, the Native Americans? First of all, saying Native American is like saying African. There are 52 fucking countries in the entire continent of Africa, and someone in Sudan is going to have a completely different culture than someone from South Africa. Genius. Or Tunisia. Genius. That is an entire fucking continent. Just like Native Americans, there were hundreds of tribes, okay? They did not have one belief. And I don't even think very many of them had the concept of two-spirit. I think that's actually there were only a few of them that had the concept of two-spirit. And you guys, guess what? They had the concept of two-spirit because they were internally homophobic. They had the concept of that because they were like, okay, well, hey, we do have this man who is attracted to men, and we do have this woman who is attracted to women. They probably also had DSD, VSD people who had ambiguous genitalia. So the way to deal with that, and I don't blame them because they didn't have technology, right? The way that they dealt with homosexuality and possible DSD people was by giving them an assignment, by saying, oh, well, they're two-spirit. Instead of saying, oh, yeah, he's just kind of a more feminine man, they would say, no, he has to be two-spirit because they couldn't have feminine men. Because that was unacceptable. They don't realize that the point they're making, if they actually look into the origins of the point they're making, is rooted in sexism. Is rooted in anti-gay sentiments. Oh my gosh. Okay. Various indigenous tribes throughout the U.S., even among white Americans. That's also not true. That's not true. I'm not thinking of anything off the top of my head, but there were specific instances in history where women did pretend to be men because they wanted a certain job. They wanted to do a certain task. So they did dress up like men and acted like a man, but that was literally just a front so they could get the job. That wasn't how they lived their entire life, 24/7. That's not true. Okay. Even among white Americans, trans people have been documented in the U.S. for hundreds of years. No, they haven't. Why are they saying this shit? No, they haven't. That is not true. The first transgender person who unfortunately died as the result of the Frankenstein doctor that killed him in the surgery, that was in the 60s. That was in Denmark, I'm pretty sure. That's not hundreds of years, by the way. The 60s was only like 60 years ago. These people also very clearly can't do basic math because 60 years ago is not 100 years, and it's definitely not hundreds of years. You have a high school level of understanding of biology and a middle school level of geography. Yeah, they like to do that too. They like to say, well, you're uneducated. You don't know what you're talking about. This woman blocked me because I asked her multiple times and she refused to answer me. I said, why are you insistent on LARPing as a man if you know you're a woman? She just wouldn't answer that question. That reminds me of this episode of Hoarders I watched where this woman, I wish this woman had gotten charged for this, because this is a felony in animal cruelty is a felony in multiple states, probably even the state that she was in. But this one woman on Hoarders had multiple animal carcasses in her house, and the therapist woman was asking her, she was like, she saw the dead animals, the skeletons, right? And she was like, so it looks like you got multiple animals knowing you couldn't take care of them, and yet you continued to do that. Why do you think that was? And the woman she was asking this to she paused for a really long time. And then when she finally spoke, she said, don't ask hard questions. That is how transgenders behave. They behave exactly like that woman. That was her refusing to answer that question, was her saying, I'm not going to answer a hard question. If you can't say why you live the way you live, you're probably in denial, and you also very fucking clearly hate yourself. If you're a trans-trender, you hate yourself. If you're a trans-trender, you're sexist. If you're a trans-trender, you're not living in reality. You're living in a fantasy world. And I'm not okay with it. I will never be okay with it. You need to stop. Everyone needs to stop enabling them and entertaining their delusion, because it's wrong. Point blank. We need to stop enabling people to do harmful behaviors. I will say this, okay? If a transgender person says, yep, I know I'm my biological sex, like, I don't even like, what's her name? I don't like Buck Angel, but she does say that she's trans. She does say she's a biological woman, but she, clearly takes testosterone and pretends and lives her life LARPing as a man. She might even say that. She might even say, yep, if you want to put it that way, that's what I do. Okay. I respect that more than someone who refuses to answer the question. I was going to say something else about this. What was I going to say? I mean, it's the same with drug addicts. If a drug addict is mature enough to say, yeah, I do have a problem. Yeah, I'm addicted to alcohol. I can't stop doing it. I need it all the time. I need it this time. Da, 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 and I need help, but I'm not going to get it. I respect that way more than someone who's in denial of their problem. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but at least they know what they're fucking talking about, and they'll acknowledge the truth. Okay, this was a long enough video. Trans men are women, and trans women are men, and the trans cult is wrong and evil and bad and harmful to society. Thank you. Goodbye.